Hello. Thank you guys for joining. My name is Tiara. I also go by Ray, R-E-Y, all lowercase. And today we're going to talk about getting started with Web3, learning as well as landing a role. So I just want to say that I am a very interactive host. So if anyone has questions, feel free to join us on Zoom, on YouTube, guys, and I'll answer questions throughout. Or if you want to wait to the end, then that's fine as well. So let's go ahead and get started. First, if you're new, you may not know what Web3 is. So let's go ahead and take a step back and talk a little bit about what Web 1.0 was, what Web 2.0 is, which is kind of what we're currently in, and what Web 3.0 promises to bring. So first, back in, let's say, the 1990s, is when we kind of say that Web 1.0 started. And Web 1.0 is simply read only. Think about the days when you had like super simple static web pages, usually created by developers with information. That's it. And that's pretty much how we categorize Web 1.0. When you start thinking about Web 2 or Web 2.0, which is what we're in now, that's when you have read and write. And so that's where you get to the part of the internet where you're able to interact, think about comments on a blog page, which evolved then into social media, where you're able to really engage and have real-time conversation. So we can see how far we've come from the beginning, when only developers and super technical people and governments were the ones creating content for the internet, when the World Wide Web was still pretty new. And we've transitioned to our current phase, Web 2.0, where we have interaction, engagement, social media, not to mention e-commerce. And that brings us to the question of, well, what's going to be different with Web 3 or Web 3.0? That's a great question. First of all, when you think about e-commerce today, and you think about the web that we have today, payments are somewhat separated, right, from the native applications. One of the major benefits or advantages that Web 3.0 brings is native payments. If you've ever heard of cryptocurrency, you understand where I'm going with this. The beautiful thing about Web3 is that cryptocurrency or native payments are baked into the technology, and you don't have to go through a central authority. So no banks, no PayPal, or any of those central figures in order to transfer funds from one person to another. You have this large, distributed, super secure, peer-to-peer payment network. Okay. The second thing that's super cool about Web3, which is from transitioning where we are now to where we're going, is the idea of ownership. So if Web 1.0 is about just reading information that's published, and Web 2.0 is about reading and writing, where a lot of us became creators, Web 3's biggest promise is about ownership. So we go from being the product in Web 2 to being the owners in Web 3. So I want to talk about this a little bit more. You may or may not know, but when you think about these large social media sites, YouTube's, the LinkedIn's, Facebook, or Metas of the world, the main way that they make their money is by treating us as the product. So our data and our time is used and monetized for the company's benefit. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but if you think about the fact that we're the creators and we don't directly profit off of it, there's an opportunity there. I'll put it that way. In Web 3, the really cool thing is, by the nature of the technology, we become our own owners of not only our data and our time, but the ability to monetize those. And so one of the main tenets of Web 3.0 or Web 3 is ownership of your time, of your data, and of the ability to monetize those, instead of the large corporations or tech companies that today monetize it instead and profit off of us. So I want to pause here. I've seen some people join. Is everyone kind of clear on Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3? If you guys have any questions, let me know either in the chat or feel free to come off of mute and ask before I continue. Anyone?
Yeah, I think so far I am good with understanding Web 1, Web 2, Web 3.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'll go ahead. So now that you know a little bit about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, where we are today and where we're going, let's talk about learning. So you know what they are. You kind of know the tenets of decentralized technologies, including blockchain, NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. You probably have heard of some tokenomics, play to learn, earn to learn. I've even seen move to earn. There's a lot of innovation in that section of Web3. But if you're looking to get involved either on a more technical level or more detailed level, how do you start learning? So I want to spend some time talking about that. Being that we connected on LinkedIn, I want to share that there are so many people, content creators on LinkedIn that you can learn from. So there are a number of free options to learn about Web3, and then there are some paid options as well. So I'll start with the free ones. YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn are some of the main sites that you can go to and learn about Web3 for free. There are a number of hashtags that you can follow, as well as notable content creators that share content daily or weekly. For example, I'm a content creator on LinkedIn. I share content every single day. You can look at hashtags such as blockchain, blockchain technology, NFTs, or Web3. And there are a number of people from content creators, writers, other founders that share content, that share and teach about how you can learn more on these different technologies. So there's social media. The second thing is a lot of the companies like Coinbase, Genesis, some of the exchanges have lots of documentation that you can go through that will also teach you not only what it is, how it works, but also get into the details of how you can even become developers, utilizing their APIs, traders, or writers on these topics and subjects. So there's a lot of free resources available to teach you more about Web3. Now, what I want to say is Web3 is this catch-all term that includes so many different facets in technology. Everything from the metaverse, which is a huge innovation in itself, non-fungible tokens, blockchain technology, which has layer 1, layer 2 protocols, side chains. You also have a lot of the art that goes behind it. So you have NFT artists as well as NFT developers. And so what I want to stress is that knowing what you want to do within Web3 is important because there's so many different avenues that you can take. And so when you say, hey, I want to learn more about Web3, one of the main things I would say is first, understand all the different technologies and subgenres within the technology so that you can know which direction you want to go in. For example, someone who says, hey, I'm pretty technical. I want to be a developer in Web3. Completely awesome. But then the question still remains, are you more interested in back-end development, front-end development? Do you have a specific area of Web3 you want to work in? Again, you have NFTs, you have blockchain, you have the metaverse, which goes into 2D and 3D. So there are a lot of different modeling, if that's your thing. There are a lot of different aspects of each of these that you can work in, that you can specialize in. So when you're looking at learning, especially with free resources, the best thing you can do is ask questions. And in order to get valuable answers, you have to ask specific questions. And so the first thing is learning in general. The second thing, though, is finding out what your niche or what is most interesting to you within this huge, new emerging space. Okay, so let's say you've gone through and you say, hey, I understand Web 1 versus Web 2.0 and what Web 3 is going to bring. And then you say, okay, I also understand that there are a lot of different niches inside of Web 3. It includes everything from the metaverse to blockchain to NFTs. And say you're going to pick NFTs. You're super interested with non-fungible tokens, and you know that you want to do something more technical. Okay, perfect. So now you have niched down and focused in on what you want. The good news is some of these things aren't as new as they used to be. And so you can even find courses about NFT development on Udemy, Marketplace, for example, if you're looking for something of a paid, more structured course. There are also a number of founders that offer free courses on, of course, promoting their own blockchains. And one that I love a lot, Near Protocol, has an entire academy that not only teaches you about Web3, blockchain, and NFT development, but it also rewards you with their native currency. So you kind of mix in both a learn to earn model as well as a free way to learn more. They also have very hands-on activities. So as you're learning, you're also practicing what you've learned. So again, there are a number of free resources. There are a few good paid resources as well. But the most important thing in Web3 is asking questions because the field is still very new. And so what you'll find as you look, if you were to say, hey, I want a comprehensive beginning to end on everything that is encompassed in Web3, you probably will not find it because the field is still pretty new and people are still learning so much every single day. There are a lot of dreams within Web3, and there are some things we've realized, like the metaverse. We have some initial metaverses that exist, multiple different platforms. But when you think about the full vision, it's still being realized, it's still being developed, it's still being created. So I want to pause here to see if there's anyone who is somewhat familiar with Web3 or if you already have an idea of what direction you want to go in. Anyone?
Hey, Tiara. So my question is like, what kind of DevOps careers do we have inside Web3? Like, I know there is a lot of back end, front end, Solidity, Rust, all these programming languages. But what about like, let's say I'm more into Unix administration. So how can I get into DevOps side?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would say is if you have a preference on where, like what niche within Web3 you want to work in, for example, you say, hey, I want to be a blockchain developer. Then there's a number of good resources actually, because blockchain has been around a lot longer than people think. It may have been recently getting popular in the last few years, but we actually have had blockchain technology for almost a decade now. So I'll use that example, and then I'll use a more recent one as well. So to your question, if you say, hey, I have this background in Unix, I want to transition into Web3, I'm a more technical person, and I'm interested in blockchain. There are a number of courses, including certification courses, that will take you from beginning to end, going through not only programming languages, but projects to start padding your portfolio with hands-on experience of everything from building your own private blockchain to building an NFT marketplace using blockchain technology, and they lead you through it. You have Q&A. So one that I'll kind of share is Blockchain Council. So I've gone through 2 of their courses now. I think the material is very thorough, so it's one that I would recommend. And for a price, this isn't free, but you not only get your certification, but you have, I think it's 15 hours of material where they take you through from, I know zero about blockchain to at the end, you're building out really impressive projects utilizing all the knowledge that you've learned. So one avenue is paid certifications. If you're looking for something maybe free or less expensive, then you can always look at startups. So I shared a post recently on LinkedIn. There are a lot of excellent projects out there that haven't gotten funding yet. And so there's an opportunity to shadow current blockchain developers, using our example. And in exchange for basically volunteering to help with their project, you're able to learn for free alongside professionals. So there are volunteer opportunities, there are certification opportunities, and then you can always, if you're super patient, spend time on YouTube or LinkedIn. There are actually some really detailed step-by-step tutorials for every single topic you can imagine. There's one person I follow specifically that breaks down code for everything from NFT contracts to minting things on the blockchain, and they do this on LinkedIn for free. So there's a lot of information free if you're willing to ask specific questions to find it. And then if you're more like you, a direct person, there are paid courses as well, like the Blockchain Council, that will give you a certification at the end. So that's an example for if you're like, hey, I want to transition from Unix into blockchain development. If you're saying, hey, I want to get into something a little newer, like the metaverse, there are a lot of technical opportunities there. The thing that I've seen the most that is needed for the metaverse is a combination of art, UX, UI, and DevOps. So You're looking at people who are doing the modeling for the environments. You're looking at people who are doing some of the rigging for the avatars or how we kind of personify ourselves in the metaverse. And so you'll look at a number of different Unity, of course, Engine, Unreal Engine are both really popular for that type of work if you're looking more toward the metaverse. So depending on what niche within Web3 you're most interested in is going to dictate what technology that you'll be using and what skills you'll need to know. But in any case, there's always kind of three options: the paid option, the volunteer option where you're working alongside a startup or a nonprofit to learn. And then if you're super just kind of like, hey, I want to do it completely on my own, there are lots of tutorials about all of these things on YouTube, LinkedIn, social media, but then you just have to get really specific about the steps and the skills so that you'll ask specific enough questions to find the right materials. So that was a great question. I hope that was helpful. And again, some of these don't translate one-to-one, so you may not still be using all of your knowledge that you have today from being a Unix administrator or a developer, but being able to comprehend that level of technical detail, it will be a lot easier to learn and pick up on the new technology that you will use, whether you're doing blockchain or something in the metaverse or something with NFTs or non-fungible tokens. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? I definitely am completely fine with you guys interrupting to ask questions as we go along. Okay. So,
Tiara, excuse me. Can you explain the difference between DAO and DApps?
You said one more time.
Can you explain difference between DApps and DAO?
So Tiara is asking for the difference between DAO and the DEX protocol.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay. So, yeah, so decentralized exchange, and you said DEX and the DAO?
Yeah, like similar to like, what we have LLCs, we have DAOs, right? Like, like decentralized organizations.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Great question. Sorry. It was a little. So the difference between a DEX or decentralized exchange and a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. Let's start with both and then we'll kind of compare. So when you think about a DAO, I like to use the analogy of thinking about a board of directors or an LLC. A DAO is a Web3 version of ownership, okay? So depending on what the DAO does, I'll use an example. I'm part of the Resistance DAO. And the Resistance is on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. And it's mostly about accelerating Web3. So bringing in founders, bringing in Web3 enthusiasts, professionals to help further mature and develop the field. What does that mean? Being a part of the Resistance DAO is about having ownership in the different plans of the accelerator. Now, there's also one that I saw was a DAO based on, and you have DAOs for everything, guys. Think about how you have board of directors for everything, or you have different business entities for everything. So there's a DAO that I saw specifically about women in Web3, and theirs is about getting more women into the field from a career standpoint, as well as helping to accelerate women founders. And so in short, what you're owning or what you're a part of is really dictated by the nature of the DAO or decentralized autonomous organization. But in general, think about it as a board of directors for a company, or think about it as having ownership if you were part of a business. And that ownership usually is demonstrated via an NFT or non-fungible token. A lot of times it includes voting rights. It can also include dictates on how the budget for the DAO is used, kind of what you guys will fund, what you won't fund, how much you'll spend. It can also include the ability to make a profit when the DAO invests or buys something and then splits it among its members. So a lot of the details of how it will operate is up to the members and how they've structured it. But in general, think about DAO, think about ownership, and think about it similar to, like I said, a board of directors or the members of an LLC. Now, for a decentralized exchange, you're talking, let's start with the centralized exchange. Most people are familiar with Coinbase. And so you're able to go and you're able to exchange, whether it's fiat, so in my case, US dollars, for cryptocurrency or for another currency from another nation or country. You're able to trade, as well as for some people who want to invest long term, able to just buy and hold. The biggest difference between centralized and decentralized is whether you have one company or entity that is in control of everything, or the Web3 version, a DEX or decentralized exchange, where you have multiple different people, entities that are helping to facilitate the entire system. So in the case of Coinbase, it is a publicly registered company. There is a headquarters. There is one person that is kind of like the CEO that is making, the majority of decisions. Versus a decentralized exchange, you don't have that. You'll have a number of different people, entities using distributed, decentralized technologies to run the exchange and to facilitate that. The funds are not centralized in one place. And it's, in a lot of ways, a more secure way to ensure that no one person, one entity, one country can tell you where your money can go, what you can do with it, or have any kind of arbitrary limits on how much you can trade, how much you can invest. So when you think about them, it isn't more of a comparison. They're two kind of separate concepts that both exist in Web3 that are improvements, if you will say, of things that we already have in Web2 or today. So you think about the improved version of an LLC or a board of directors, that would be a DAO, or you think about the improved, benefits of having a decentralized exchange that doesn't go through necessarily any banks or centralized governments or entities versus the centralized exchange and companies that we have today. So that was a really good question. Thank you for asking.
Hey, Tiara, can you explain us the difference between metaverse and Web3?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
What is the difference between metaverse and Web3? Is it both same or?
Yep, good question. So the metaverse, which I would say is probably the newest part of Web3, is a part of it. So when you think about Web3, think about an umbrella. And then there are multiple things underneath the umbrella. So underneath Web3, you'll have blockchain, which people are more or less familiar with. You'll also have NFTs, which is related to blockchain, but separate concept. And then you can also say, hey, underneath this umbrella, which is Web3, we have the metaverse. So it's a part of it. It's underneath the umbrella, included within it. And specifically, when we think about the metaverse, we think about having this digital representation of our physical world, but not just a copy or a replica. We're looking at ways we can enhance it, and it is a different experience than just what we have today. Now, I will admit the metaverse is still pretty early. So in some ways, it might just look like a cool video game, but the future of the metaverse is supposed to be a place that is not just a copy of what we have today. It doesn't just look like a video game, but it adds on capabilities and functionality that we don't already have. So I will say that out of all the Web3 technologies, in my opinion, the metaverse is still the one that has a lot of potential to mature. But what we're trying to do, or what people within Web3 are trying to do, is not only copy what we have today, but also extend it to give a completely different experience and to be able to connect and unite more people than we have today, just with social media and kind of video chats and that nature of things. So it's definitely a part of the Web3. It's not different from, and if you think about Web3 being an umbrella and all the things included in it, the metaverse will be included in it as part of it. Does that help?
Yes, Tiara, yes. Tiara, you have mentioned about NFTs, right? So like, how can it be useful for the Web3 NFT?
Yes. So most people know about NFTs and they think about profile pictures. So you have like all these different ones, the most famous probably being CryptoPunks or Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs. But what some people don't realize, or maybe mainstream doesn't realize, non-fungible tokens can be used for so much more than just art. So art is a super cool use case. We've seen a lot of different types of art, the profile pictures, paintings that are turned into NFTs, and people buy them to show ownership for different art or to support different artists. But there are so many other ways you can use NFTs and that they can be beneficial. So I'll share a few. The first thing, you can use NFTs to show ownership, but it doesn't have to be just art. You can use NFTs to show fractional ownership of real estate, of land, of things that exist like in real life as well. Because at the end of the day, a non-fungible token is basically a proof of ownership that lives on the blockchain to say, hey, this person owns this thing. So the thing doesn't have to just be a picture or art. It can be anything. So think about anything you can own and you can essentially have an NFT for it. That's the first thing. The second thing is NFTs or non-fungible tokens. The really cool thing is can be used for identification. So for example, we could have set this up where we use NFTs to join this meeting. And each person would have an NFT that says, hey, this is the NFT for DEInclusive for the meeting for today. And the NFT would be our login instead of getting a link from Zoom in our email. So NFTs can be used for a broad array of use cases, everything from ownership of not just digital assets, but physical assets like real estate or land, or one day maybe even houses and cars. But they can also be used for identity. So think about any place where you have an email and a username, or email and a password. You could replace that with an NFT and use that as identification or login as well. And then one other thing I'll add that is probably my favorite is you can use NFTs to token gate. So remember, NFTs are non-fungible tokens to token gate content. So for example, we're live streaming this to YouTube as well. You could have it set up where people have to have an NFT to view the YouTube video. So NFTs can be used in a number of super exciting ways, and it's not just art and it's not just profile pictures. And then the last thing I'll add is you can actually have different types of content with your NFTs. So yes, art is the most popular that we're seeing right now, but you can also have music, movies, GIFs, videos. There's a large array of different types of content that an NFT can be, aside from just a picture or art or profiles that we've seen so far. So that is an excellent question. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because there's a misconception that NFTs are just this one thing. And though that might be what we've seen so far, it's not the only thing that they can be used for. And it's not the only thing, the only use case and value that they can bring. So I love that question. Are there any other questions? I'm happy to answer them, or I can go ahead and share more about getting a job in Web3, either one. Okay, perfect. So we talked about Web3, we've answered some questions, talked about some concepts such as DEX or decentralized exchange, DAO or decentralized autonomous organization. We talked about NFTs and kind of the different ways you can use them. And so what I want to do now is focus a little bit on getting a job. So we talked about it a little bit before, but I want to spend a little bit more time focusing on that. So as you have decided kind of what you want to do, let's say you're not very technical. You're interested in Web3 and you don't have a technical job today. You're not a developer and you're not interested in being one. Perfect. There are so many non-technical roles in Web3 and people don't necessarily know about them. So I want to start by listing a couple of opportunities that are less technical in nature, and then talk a little bit about how you can get experience, how you can get exposed to those, and then how you can land a role. So first, one of the things that is very popular in Web3 that people may or may not realize is marketing. So there is a huge need for people with marketing, social media, community management skill set in Web3. So one thing that is super important in Web3, community. It's about the community that you're building. It's about the broader Web3 community, as well as the community for your specific projects or product. And so one very popular role, if you go and look at Web3 jobs, if you just kind of put it in Google, you'll see community manager pop up so many times. And you don't have to be technical in order to be a good community manager. So there are a few different responsibilities. Oftentimes it will include managing a Discord server, because a lot of the Web3 community likes Discord, but there are also a lot of community managers that specialize in Twitter or Facebook, and there are even some now that are starting to specialize in LinkedIn. So it's essentially someone who is going to help engage, interact with the community on social media. I'm oversimplifying it, but that is essentially what the community manager does. That's one of the responsibilities. You're also expected to be informed about, the products or the project that you're a community manager for, so you can answer questions. And then there are a couple other nuances to it as well. But as you can see, it's not very technical. If you can log in to a social media site and you kind of know how it works and it functions, then you're halfway there to the technical part of being a community manager. So there's that. These projects, no matter how great the technology is or how amazing the product is, if no one knows about it, then they won't be very successful. And so to that point, marketing is super important in Web3, just like it is in Web2 and every other industry. Social media, a lot of Web3 is digital, as we talked about. And so social media marketing, social media management, content creation are all non-technical roles that are very important and needed in Web3. Again, sales. Sales is not necessarily a technical skill set. Sales is very important in Web3 as well. And then some of the I'll say a blend of technical and non-technical. Project management, program management, product management are all roles that aren't necessarily hardcore DevOps or development, but are still important in Web3. So basically, there's an opportunity for every single person who wants to be a part or to land a role in Web3 to find a good fit, whether they're very technical or not technical at all. So I always love sharing that, because people, sometimes they only think about the developers, which are important. We need developers, but it's not the only thing that's needed. So everything from operations to customer service. For every Web3 project or company, you need customer service. And you don't have to be very technical in order to be a very good customer service, candidate, right? There are finance. Of course, we need finance. You probably have seen some of these projects that have, crazy evaluations and get lots of funding, which is great. But if they don't have a very good finance person to help them manage it, they won't be very successful. So there are a number of non-technical roles within Web3 for those who may be interested, but aren't necessarily developers. The next thing I'll say is, once you've identified what role you want, whether it's technical or non-technical, the most important thing is getting experience. So let's just say you know everything there is to know. I'll go back and pick on blockchain to be a blockchain developer. That's great. But if you don't have any experience, any hands-on projects or coding that you've done, it's going to be very difficult to convince someone to hire and pay you to do that professionally. And so everything from thinking of your own project and going out and building it, partnering with a nonprofit or a startup or a very new Web3 company and helping to build out their vision, or even volunteering, short term, just to get hands-on experience. however you want to do it, it's super important to have a portfolio of, I would say, 3 to 5 projects, whether it's social media management. If you say, hey, I want to do social media management for Web3, then it would be important for you to do a few social media campaigns, either real, or you can say, hey, if I were a social media manager for Bored Ape Yacht Club, this is the type of campaign I would run. These are the type of posts that I would suggest for Twitter, and these are the ones I would suggest for them on other social media networks. You don't have to actually be employed to get experience. You don't have to actually work for a brand to show, what you know and what you would do. So I would say having some creativity also helps. So whether you do, hey, if I were the social media manager for Bored Ape Yacht Club, this is what it would look like. Or if you say, hey, I'm going to go work with this new startup no one's heard of and volunteer, for 3 months, 1 month to build up my portfolio. Either of those works. You can also, if you're super creative, you can say, hey, if I were to make up my own Web3 project or company, and it can be for pretend, then this is what it would look like. So you can go and build. I met a guy on LinkedIn who went and built a social media network using blockchain technology. Now, he didn't really launch it. He's not looking to create a new social media, but he wanted to have a really cool project in his portfolio to prove that he was able to utilize all the different technologies listed on his LinkedIn profile. So when people say, hey, what experience do you have? He has this really cool link that sends you over to the social media website that he built completely using decentralized technologies and built on Polygon blockchain. How cool is that? So the key thing is to figure out what you want to do, what type of role you'll be interested in, and then build out a portfolio of at least 3 up to 5 different projects or samples to show what you're able to do. Another cool role that anyone can kind of get into, content writing. There are a lot of opportunities in Web3 for content writing. So whether that is writing white papers for new projects, new companies, or writing their blog posts or their long form content on social media, there are a lot of opportunities for people who are interested, passionate, and skilled to be content writers within the space. And again, you would need to have samples of articles that you've written about whatever your niche is. So if your niche is the metaverse, then you would need to have articles written about, this is what the metaverse is, this is how it's different from games that we have today, this is where the metaverse is trying to go. You would have different content that you've written in your portfolio to show and demonstrate to people your ability to write in that space. If your niche for content writing was NFTs, then you would have something about, this is what non-fungible tokens are, these are the use cases today, here are some of the future use cases, here's some of the controversy around NFTs and their effect on the environment. Here's, the merge that is coming up on the Ethereum network and why this is important. And you have all those samples to demonstrate your ability and your knowledge to write within, NFT niche. So everything from content writing, social media management, to more technical, hardcore DevOps roles. There's an opportunity for everyone in Web3. And the most important thing, again, is learning, but then also having a portfolio to show and demonstrate what you do know and, prove that you have the ability to execute what you are saying is your niche. So I know that was a lot of information to take in. Does anyone have any questions or any specific kind of, hey, if I want to do this, what's your recommendation? I'd be happy to answer. Okay, so if not, I would say kind of the last thing I want to touch on is how to find opportunities in Web3. So there are a number of different ways. I'll start with kind of my 3 favorite. One, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite social media sites. So I'll start there. if you go to jobs in LinkedIn and you put in Web3, there are a number of different jobs that will come up. Everything from, as we talked about, content writers to community managers to social media. But what you'll notice is that you'll also get some things for crypto or cryptocurrency. You'll get some for metaverse. You'll get some for blockchain, NFTs, and it really just depends on the way that they've written the job posting. So if they've included Web3 in their job posting, then those will come up as well. But you're missing out on a lot of potential opportunities. And that's why, if we go back to what I said in the beginning, it's very important for you to niche down and choose what your specialty will be. Or even if you have more than one, choose both of them, because there are some job postings, for example, for metaverse jobs that won't come up if you just put in Web3. You have to specifically put in metaverse as your keyword. So it's important for you to know what you want your specialty to be so that you can put in the right keywords to bring up all of the potential open opportunities. So that's the first tip. The second thing is being sure about the type of job you want. So if you want to be a developer, putting in just metaverse may not be enough. You need to put in the specific type of work you want to do. And that's why research and learning is so important, because we talked about it before. What are the different components that you need technically in order to enable the metaverse? So for example, we think about the avatars, you want them to have life-like movement. So you have to think about how are we going to rig the avatars or the characters so that they have lifelike movement. You think about the modeling that is necessary for not only the avatars, but also for the environments. And sometimes, depending on how the job is written, it might just have 3D modeler, for example, or 3D modeler for the metaverse. So if you just put in developer, you wouldn't get that. So being as specific as possible when you're searching for jobs helps to give you the best options of getting everything that's there versus just those that have like the most keywords in them. That's the first thing. The second thing is understanding that job postings in general are asking for like best case scenario. So you may not have every single qualification, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't still apply, especially if you have a portfolio that demonstrates what you can do. It's still important for you to have the courage and the confidence to apply, because you still may end up being the most qualified candidate, even if you don't have every single thing that they're asking for on the job posting or the job requirements. A rule of thumb I've heard is if you have at least 70%, go ahead and apply for it, because you still are a competitive candidate. So sometimes it can be intimidating if the job posting has a lot of different things on there and you're like, hey, I don't have, every single thing. It's okay. Most people don't. And having, I would say, at least 65 to 70% of what they're asking for, as well as a solid portfolio of 3 to 5 projects showing what you're capable of, still apply for the job and see, let them tell you how well of a fit you are, or even if there's something that maybe you need to improve on, let them tell you that, because that's helpful before you apply for your next role. So that's LinkedIn. What you guys may not know or may not have considered is that websites such as Indeed also have a lot of options, and some of those actually are not even posted on LinkedIn. So I've went and done some kind of research and comparison for different jobs from different companies. Some are posted on both, but there were some that I found on Indeed that were not posted on LinkedIn. So going to multiple different job websites, whether it's the ones that I've mentioned or others, is good too, because sometimes you'll find opportunities that aren't posted other places. And the more opportunities you have, the more potential you have to land your next role in technology or in Web3. So it's really important to use different resources to see all the different opportunities that are out there. Now, my third way I would say is networking. And this can happen on any site or in real life events as well, is where you just figure out, again, say you want to work in NFTs, you want to work in non-fungible tokens, niche within Web3, and you want something, let's say, sales related. So you want to help Artists sell their NFTs as part of, you know, a decentralized exchange. Perfect. Or an NFT marketplace, either one. So you can actually land your next role, not through applying directly or even volunteering with them, but through networking. How does this work? So for example, you can join a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, which has a lot of founders of NFT marketplaces in it. You can spend time sharing, you know, your experience with sales and some of the things in your portfolio, which may include working with someone, up and coming NFT artist, and how you help to sell their work, or how you help to get them listed with a larger private exchange. You can also spend time networking with them to say, hey, this is how you're doing things today, but here's something I could suggest to help you do things better tomorrow. And by adding that value, they can see, you know, how you would be beneficial to them as an employee, and the value that you would bring if they hired you without a formal application or interview process. And I can tell you guys that I have seen people land roles through networking, seen people land roles through the groups and organizations that they're a part of. So it absolutely does happen. It does work. And it is I would say, maybe less direct process, but it can help you to uncover opportunities that aren't posted anywhere, or have a shortcut to getting those opportunities versus going through a very long formal process of applying and going through countless interviews, having to pass through ATS or applicant tracking systems that are automated and sometimes disqualify good applicants. So it's something that people don't always consider, but networking with the companies, with the people, or the job titles that you want is also a really good way to land a role in Web3 or really any industry. So I would say, one, LinkedIn, because that's where I am and I see a lot of jobs posted there. Two, using different websites. So whether it's Indeed, Monster, different job websites to see all the different roles that may be posted in different places. And then my third tip is networking. Networking is a great way to find your next role, to get great recommendations. And especially if you're open to working with startups, a lot of times they may not post roles in traditional places. They may ask someone that they know, if they know anybody that's a good candidate, or they may ask people directly that they've worked with if they're interested in working for their startup. And so in those cases, networking is absolutely essential, because these are kind of roles that are shared via word of mouth only. So I'll pause right here to see if anyone has any questions about those tips, building a portfolio, or getting into any specific niche within Web3. Okay, well, if you guys don't have any more questions, thank you so much for attending. I hope it was helpful talking about Web3, clarifying some of the concepts, and then talking about what you can do to help you land the role that you might want within the Web3 space. So if you guys have any other questions, you think of anything, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like I said, I am pretty active there. I post daily and I answer every single question on my comments or in my DMs. There are a lot of good resources to learn about Web3, to land roles in Web3. There are a lot of opportunities out there. As I said before, they're not all technical. So even if you're not a developer, you can find a role in Web3. And one of the best ways to learn is to ask questions. So there's never a bad question, and there really isn't too many questions. So ask every question you have. And the more questions that you ask, the more information that you get, and then you get some hands-on experience and build your portfolio, and you're literally halfway there. So I know that it can be intimidating to put yourself out there, to talk to people and ask questions, but really the Web3 community is super welcoming. Everyone I've met has been very friendly in real life and online, and wants to share the information to get more people involved. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you guys will reach out if you have any questions or need anything. And I'm super excited about Web3, guys. And if anyone wants to join the field, Please do. There are so many opportunities in Web3 and just waiting for great people to join. So thank you guys so much for having me. If you guys don't have any other questions, then thank you so much.